they're presenting with depression. We're telling their parents, hey, they're expressing these suicidal thoughts. We are getting people involved in treating that, and no one is asking, hey, what's your THC use look like?
Mm.
Because of how we are seeing them increasingly connected. We are
Yep.
seeing psychotic disorders
Mm-hmm.
are double in
Wow.
kids who have used weed in the last year, never mind regularly. For
On a
kids who are
regular
using
basis.
listen to this statistic. This is crazy. Is that in the last, that a kid who is using regularly, and they identified regularly as, a week, every week even,
Mm-hmm.
they are having 11 time risk of developing schizophrenia or bipolar disorder.
Wow.
And it used to be that THC would, if there was a predisposition, right, in the family, that that it could spark, psychosis or younger, make it worse, like,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Yeah.
harder to recover from. But
Right.
we are watching kids with no genetic predisposition whatsoever because of what it's become. I sit in on a spy on a parent network
Mm-hmm.
of 1,200 parents at my last
Wow.
count of teenagers who are all in active psychotic disorders.
Welcome to the table. I'm Bridget Johnson. Today, my guest is Kriya Linzian, a licensed addiction clinician and prevention specialist who spent 30 plus years earning a reputation as a teen whisperer. If you've ever sat in a meeting where assumptions were made about a particular student's depression, about their suicidal thoughts, but nobody asked about substances, then today's conversation is going to change how you read that whole picture. Kriya walks us through what students are actually getting now. She'll tell you that the levels of THC in the actual plant have gone from single digits to 25 or even 30%. Then she talks about why the kids drifting to phones and vapes on a quiet weekend may be telling you less about their character and more about your own leftover social policies. Lastly, she leaves you with something you can use in the first few weeks of school. Read the substance policy out loud with students. Ask them why they think it exists and say plainly what your discipline is really for. Now, here's my conversation with Kriya. How you doing today, Kriya?
I am good. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm so excited to have you. And so I'm just going to jump right in. And so, you said
Yeah.
this work chose you and not the other way around. Walk us through your own path of how you got here.
Yeah. So I was a private boarding school kid in a New
Mhm.
England boarding school. And I, starting in, I would say around middle school, really started to reach out for ways to feel comfortable in my skin
Mhm.
and gain acceptance and not feel difficult things that I was feeling and just kind of get my cool
Uh-huh.
points on as people start to care about in middle school, right?
Yep.
And the ways that I did that led to the very short version, to
Mhm.
rehab at 19
Wow.
and being in having struggling with multiple addictive behaviors. That was something that really built through middle and through high school and showed up in some different ways. And
Uh-huh.
I had folks that were, I would just say, that did not intervene in ways that I think would have made a difference.
Mhm.
And so part of, what I have been committed to being that person and to training others at how to be that person and create school environments and cultures where we really are kind of addiction proofing our students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's that's incredible. So you describe your superpower as understanding and speaking team. Tell us what that actually looks like in a room with a student who's struggling.
Yeah. So I think it's really similar to how it looks when we're parenting,
Okay.
honestly, right?
Yeah.
Because I think when we are working in a school, we're parenting them,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely
So kind
parenting.
of, yeah. So that art of teen whispering is largely about them feeling respected and
Mhm.
keeping in mind how easy it is for adolescents to not feel respected, and they feel condescended or
Yeah.
disempowered. So that means being collaborative with them. That means that we are including them in, let's talk about what to do about this,
Okay.
right? Versus doing things to them and for them,
Mm.
but not with them.
Uh-huh.
Right? Really including them, honoring their autonomy and their intelligence. So before we say anything, it's so hard because we know so much and we see the
Right.
big picture with our fully developed brains, right? Like, God, if they would just do all this, it would go
They
really
would be
well. Or
fine, right?
if they'd stop doing this stupid stuff, all would
Right.
be well. And we want to go into that lecture and teaching mode, especially as educators or as counselors, or right, it's natural for us. And we have to
Yeah.
squash that and instead ask questions. Ask them, what
Yeah.
do you already know about this stuff? What do you think? And what do you feel? And what are your ideas on this? Before we come in with the like, okay, and I've got some, but here's the honoring their autonomy is asking permission.
Yeah.
I went through something
I
like
like
this,
that.
or I've got some ideas, or we could brainstorm this. How do you feel about that? Or can I share that with you? So those are some,
Yeah.
I think,
One of the
some
things I
simple
think
ones.
mistakes that I think we sometimes make is thinking we already know what the issue is or the concern is. And so we launch
Mhm.
right into solutions
Yeah.
without being curious and asking the question, like, what's really going on here? Like, tell me how we
Yes.
got here. Tell me what's
Yeah.
going on in your world that
Yeah.
led you to make some of these decisions. And sometimes we're
Absolutely.
surprised. I mean, I feel like more than sometimes we're surprised by the response because we
Right.
think we know, and it's something, could be something completely different.
Yeah.
Like,
And we can't
I didn't
assume.
even, can't assume.
Yeah,
Like, I thought I knew.
no.
I know
Even
nothing.
even though, well, I was your age once, and we
Exactly.
were
Oh
never
gosh.
16 in 2026. We were not,
Exactly.
right? But
Exactly.
you just nailed it too, Bridget. Is that coming from care and curiosity is key. Like just being like, hey, because I care about you, I'm
Hmm.
concerned. Because I care about you, I want to know what's going on in your inner world and your outer world. And right, like we just express care. And again, that curiosity where we're like, okay, let them school me.
Yeah.
Let them school me on them. Right.
But it
Yeah.
also, I think, now I'm speaking for the person that we're trying to get information from, that they feel like once you actually listen to them, that they actually feel like this person is actually invested in me and helping me kind of sort this out, not just trying to kind of check the box and move me
Hmm.
along. That
Yeah.
goes a long way in terms of building credibility and relationship and trust with students, which is what we need for them to open up
100%.
and be honest, right? About what's happening
Right.
with them. Can't
Yeah.
help them if they're not really honest about it, right? But if they
Absolutely.
don't
And
feel like you're genuine, then they don't.
right. And we've got some bad habits as
We do
adults.
have
We
some
really, so
bad
they tell me
habits.
every day that we will force our like inflict help on them.
I
They
like
say,
inflict
right?
help. I love that.
Right, without asking. All right,
Yep.
let's solve your problem. They're like, I just want to vent. I'm just
Yeah.
having a hard day, whatever, right?
Yep.
We
No,
inflict help on them.
absolutely.
We can be condescending and intrusive and assuming. And, there's a whole list of things that they tell me every day we do. And one of the worst ones is not listening.
Not
Yeah.
listening. Yep. I think we are
Yep.
definitely guilty of that more often than not, unfortunately. Not with bad intentions. I think we just, we're getting into help
Mhm.
mode and we just kind of
Of course.
plowing through without
Yeah.
taking a beat. And so sometimes we just
Yep.
need to take a pause. So
Hmm.
switching gears just a little bit. So,
Yeah.
you're seeing a real acceleration in certain substance trends right now. What do you feel like has
Yeah.
changed the most in the last couple of years?
Yeah. So there's some things they're the same substances, but they have morphed in
And
forms. And so we can't assume we know what they are because we're like, oh yeah, nicotine. I smoked for a minute and then in high school and I'm fine. Or
right.
it's just alcohol, it's just weed, right? It is not the same stuff. It's not being marketed the same way, packaged the
Yeah.
same way, delivered right. So THC for one, THC has gone from like in the 80s when I was in high school, late 80s had like 4% THC in it. So tetrahydrocannabinol
Hmm.
in the plant.
Right.
Just in the plant, right? There was one in the 70s. And now even the plant has been modified. So it is 25, 30, up to 35%, especially in
Wow.
legal states where kids are, can get their hands on it easier. in the
Mm-hmm.
higher amounts. So we're talking about something that is 35 times potentially stronger than, the 70s hippie. We think of them like the stoners and the tie-dye,
Yeah.
that's the plant. Never mind when they're using a vaping device. So it's either
Right.
dab, as they call it, right? Or wax or a cartridge, a liquid
Mm.
cartridge, that those start at 50 into the 90th percentile. And they are
Wow.
chemically extracted. In the case of vapes, they are mixed with, in cartridges, they're mixed with a bunch of mystery crap that we just don't even know what it does. Right. So there's all these chemical processes. It's very, very artificial. It's not marijuana anymore, by the way, when it's being vaped. And
Mm-hmm.
and our brains and bodies are not, particularly adolescent ones, are not designed to handle 90% THC. So it is
Wow.
become a hard drug. I'm very clear in making that statement because of the consequences that we're seeing it having on mental health, on cognitive development, on just emotional management, just cognitive processes, memory, like really, really significant impacts, particularly on growing adolescent brains. So again, this is not
Yeah.
the weed that some of us used when we were in high school and like had a phase and then went out of it. It's a totally different thing. So, and then nicotine products,
Mm-hmm.
right? That a vape, one of those things that you see in in the vape shops, the very large majority of those are not even legal in the country. For
Oh,
one,
really?
they're manufactured elsewhere in other countries. They are, so there's nobody's accountable to what's in them. There's no, it's not really
Jeez.
regulated in that kind of way, right? But the nicotine in there is being synthesized in a lab. And so it behooves them to make it more and more addictive,
Of
right?
course.
As well
Not
as
that
all of the
caffeine and nicotine's not addictive enough, right?
Right. And so already, right, the most addictive substance that exists, but now they make it more and more addictive. And those vapes that are the trending vapes where it says like 15,000 or 20,000 if you look on the device, and now they're
Uh-huh.
flat. They make them so they pair with phones so that they play games, so that they have little Tamagotchi pets that you have to keep alive
What?
by hitting your vape. Mm-hmm. They're Bluetooth speakers. There's collector's cards. There's all in vapes.
Whoa. I did
So,
not know that actually.
but a 15,000 puff device, you basically divide by 10, and that is how many cigarettes worth of nicotine are in one of those things. So kids can have from 500 up to 100,000 puff vape that is under, and they're all under $20, Bridget. They're all under $20
Yikes.
and easy to score. So again, people don't realize like, oh, they're just vaping. They're vaping 3,000 cigarettes
Times, yeah. Oh
over the
my
next few
gosh.
days. And
Ah.
what we know about nicotine now is as damaging serotonin production in the brain, so affecting sleep, affecting mood, long-term depression and anxiety. And we're talking about, remember, kids, it shapes their brain.
Yeah.
It damages their brain. It's not like ours where it throws it off and then goes back to where it started. It changes the structure and functions of their brain when they use substances at this age, especially things that are that strong. So
Yeah.
understanding that a kid doesn't have to use that often in
To
order to
get,
actually do some damage to their brains. And then I think the other trends are, alcohol that is coming in increasingly fun, like buzz balls, those
mm,
little things that are this small with all different kinds of cocktails, and
yeah,
they are
fun colors and
fun colors. They are 5 swigs of yumminess, and those are like 2 drinks in each one of those little things. And the biggie buzz balls are 15 drinks in one.
I don't even know if I've seen
So
the big ones. I've only seen the small ones.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
geez.
So I think then there's gas station drugs. There's always something that is legal, that is psychoactive, that somebody can get at 18 and over in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of our gas stations, and that have no regulation, no research, and until it starts to kill and cause addiction and problems, then they come in with some regulations. But there's a bunch of the gas station heroin stuff, the kratom extractions from kratom that are
What is kratom?
extremely.
Sorry, I don't. What's
So
kratom?
kratom is a leafy plant that comes from Asia, and it
Okay.
has an opioid like effect. And
Wow.
so legal in a lot of states, but what they've done, similarly to what they've done with THC,
Mm-hmm.
is that they are chemically extracting just the psychoactive alkaloid
Element.
from the
Mm-hmm.
from the plant, and then adding a bunch of crap and then turning it into this hulkified thing that's in a gas station for a few bucks. And the rate I am seeing, I mean, my colleagues in treatment, it's exploding in terms of
Wow.
addiction. And it looks like heroin um, addiction and coming off of it as well. So
Wow.
it's, I think those, and then, we've got Galaxy Gas has kind of come and gone, but it's still hanging out there a little bit. Benadryl, we've actually had a double rate of overdoses of teenagers on Benadryl
Benadryl?
in 2026. Just in the last year,
Huh.
it has exploded again. Comes and goes in waves, and right now we're in a wave
Benadryl.
because it's easy for them to buy, and
Yeah.
it's so those are I think what's trending right now.
So, how have you changed how
Yeah.
you talk to schools about this? Because, I mean, I thought there was so much back when I was working in schools, and now you've got all of this that
Yeah.
is so readily available. It's not like you got to find some dealer. You can go to the gas station, or you can order it online. And so,
Right. It's on
how
Snapchat.
have yeah? So, how have you
Yeah.
changed how you
Mhm.
talk to schools about this?
To kids or to the adults?
Both.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, to the adults, there's that like you just had those moments. I watched you go, "What? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?" Is that a lot of administrators, staff don't know. I mean, the health staff know better than anybody because
Right.
they see
Hmm.
kids coming in with some of these things and are learning about it. But a lot of us don't know what we don't know. It's not just the
Right.
parents, it's the school staff too. And so,
Exactly.
and if we don't know that, then we can't really care about it. But so first it's kind of like, all right, let's just inform staff so that they get
Hmm.
what you just did with a little bit more, right? So that then
Right.
they go, "Oh crap, I care about these kids. I don't want them to be at risk of this. So
Right.
now I'm bought in. Now I'm bought in. So now I want to know what I can do and what role I can play in whatever role, whether I'm a coach or a social studies teacher or somebody cleaning the the grounds,
Yeah, it doesn't
that
matter.
that develops relationships with kids. Like, what role can I play in that thing? So I
Mhm.
think part of it is that the staff need to get informed, so then it trickles into the kids. Because it can't just be if it's like, okay, well, the health center has this program that they do, or we bring in these outside people like me to do
Right.
programs with the kids. Yeah, all that is great. But unless they're saturated in it, because Bridget, they are saturated. If they have, I don't have my phone nearby. If
Mhm.
they got a phone, which they all do, if they're
Right.
plugged in, they are saturated in pro-use messages and distorted, mutated messages, misperceptions about this stuff.
Right.
So we really have to be overpowering that by saturating them in, everywhere they turn, they've got the encouragement to not engage in self-destructive stuff.
Mhm.
Again, and that's so that everybody, and if they can't escape it, they're getting the same unified messages, repeated messages from all the adults caring about them and their environment in some kind of way. It's going to soak in and
Right.
protect them
Yes,
more,
and that's why it's
right?
important for all the adults on campus to
Yeah.
have this knowledge, not just a
Hmm.
subset, like, because we all
Hmm.
have to be speaking this language and all kind of, understanding what's out there, right? Because you
Yeah.
can't speak intelligently if you're thinking
Right.
they're still smoking weed from the '80s, because that's not happening
Right. Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. We
So,
can't be out of touch.
everyone
We
needs to
can't
be
be out of touch.
informed, you have to be in touch, and so,
Right.
do you think schools, have been slower to engage in this issue, and if so, why?
Private schools in particular, independent
Mm,
ones.
mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, well, for one, I mean, the publicized overdoses and tragedies coming from fentanyl laced, or there are,
Yeah.
by the way, unfortunately, I just got out of a workshop last week where the DEA was presenting and showing all of the fentanyl is the least of the concerns right now. That there are things that
Wow.
are starting to get into the supply that are 10 to 50 times stronger than fentanyl. So that's
Whoa.
coming,
Okay.
unfortunately. So, um, so you hear more about the publicized tragedies, or that the ambulances are going to public school. And the public schools I'm working with, they've all had the middle schools. They have almost all had ambulances on campus
Yeah.
because of a THC overdose. Because you can overdose now, which looks like the projectile vomiting
Vomiting.
and dropping unconscious and heart palpitations and like violent vomiting and painful
Yeah.
vomiting, right? So we're seeing that in a way that is publicized, right? So then the schools are like, oh snap, we got to do something about it because now the
Mm-hmm.
media's on us because all of the, we've got all the,
Right.
all this accountability. So we know that in private schools that there, and again, I love you all. I am one of you, right? Is that there is, for one, we don't have the same federal pressures
Yes.
to publicize things. The
Right.
act, the Freedom of the FOI Act, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
not required to publicize what happens on our campuses out loud.
Nope.
And it behooves or it does not serve a school well to be known as,
Right.
right, the ones that are struggling with
Substances
some
of any
substance
sort.
issue,
Mm-hmm.
or that hadn't have incidences happening on
On
campus, or
campus.
so
Yep.
so we know that we are the masters of the image spin, and we care about it more because, again, our survival, our incomes are
Mm-hmm.
are based upon students wanting to be there and stay there, and the
Yeah.
parents wanting them to be there. So there's just a lot of complexity around owning it. It's not any different on college campuses as well, right? On
Interesting.
private college campuses where I also
Yeah.
worked,
Mm-hmm.
is that it was a very similar thing that, and the tough part is if you can't talk about it and you can't fix it.
Right.
You can't actively prevent it,
Exactly.
you know? And so, yeah, that's kind of, and then, and parents as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Parents get involved and also can make it complicated,
Right.
right?
They can,
In
yeah.
that they don't want to talk about it if it's their kid necessarily, or want people to know that it's their
Know that it was
kid.
their kid, right?
Right? They don't want. Well, discipline's a whole other conversation. We can go there. I was
Right.
going to say they make that part hard too, but yeah. So I think that's the short answer: is that there's just
Okay.
that there's some different culture around that
Gotcha.
sometimes, quote unquote, protects itself in a way that actually I think does a disservice
Mm-hmm.
to kids' health and well-being in terms of this topic.
Absolutely. So you taught health and well-being. Let's
Yeah.
talk about mental health and
Mhm.
substances, because they're so
Yeah.
intertwined, right? And so
So
how do you help a
intertwined.
school tell the difference between a mental health crisis and a substance issue when a student's struggling?
Mhm. Yeah, well, I mean, that we know that 30 to 40% of kids with a mental health, a diagnosable mental health issue, develop a
Mm-hmm.
substance use disorder. It's like
Mm,
it's a strong amount of them, and 60 to 75% of kids with a substance use disorder also have
have
a
a mental,
diagnosable, right? So but it makes sense, right? And I know in my
yeah,
own personal story that when I put alcohol in my body, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't feel anxious. Like for the first
yeah.
time in my life, and I'd never really identified that I was probably walking around with a diagnosable, or
Mm-hmm.
anxiety issue. But so if a kid is overwhelmed, stressed, can't stop the thoughts in their head, feels horrible about themselves, even if we don't call it a diagnosable mental health disorder, never mind struggling with depression or anxiety or bipolar
Right.
disorder or OCD, or right. And they take something that, like, shortcuts them to being like, oh, I feel better. This
Yeah,
worked.
this
Why
works.
the heck would they not do it again?
Exactly.
It makes sense that they would do it
Yeah.
again. And we know with malleable adolescent brains that what fires wires. So as soon as they do something and the
Fires,
dopamine pops off
wires.
and says, the dopamine goes, oh yeah,
Yeah, this
that
is
that
good.
works to either create a feeling you want
Yeah.
or take away one you don't. It goes cha-chonk, and it wires those synapses together like no other time in their lives, that go, yeah, this equals this.
Yeah.
And that, so it becomes interwoven and attached to, and again, it makes sense. That's why we have compassion for it. And again,
Yeah.
that leads to discipline. But so
Mm-hmm.
I think, so, and you're saying, how do we tell the difference? I think we have to make sure that we are asking those questions, that when a kid presents with depression,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's the in. And I see this missed is right. They're presenting with depression. We're telling their parents, hey, they're expressing these suicidal thoughts. We are getting people involved in treating that. And no one is asking, hey, what's your THC use look like?
Mm.
Because of how we are seeing them increasingly connected. We are
Yep.
seeing psychotic disorders
Mm-hmm.
are double in
Wow.
kids who have used weed in the last year, never mind regularly. For
On a
kids who are
regular
using
basis.
listen to this statistic. This is crazy. Is that in the last that a kid who is using regularly, and they identified regularly as a week, every week even,
Mm-hmm.
they are having 11 time risk of developing schizophrenia or bipolar disorder.
Wow.
And it used to be that THC would, if there was a predisposition, right, in the family, that that it could spark, psychosis or younger, make it worse, like,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Yeah.
harder to recover from. But
Right.
we are watching kids with no genetic predisposition whatsoever because of what it's become. I sit in on a spy on a parent network
Mm-hmm.
of 1,200 parents at my last
Wow.
count of teenagers who are all in active psychotic disorders.
That's
1,200 of them.
scary. That's
60 of them have lost their kids to suicide.
ugh.
So it's really real. So we just have to be making sure that we are asking the questions and keeping in mind that treating their mental health and their stress and their overwhelm and
Mm-hmm.
it is a way of preventing them leaning on substance use.
On
As we see, it may not
substances.
happen in high school, right? We may not see them reaching for it yet, but then they step into
Yeah. In
college
college. Exactly.
and, or yeah. So
Oh. So, we're thinking about it's almost you started the school year. Folks are starting to go back to school. And
mhm,
so, if you got a dean of students who's listening right now, because we talked a little bit about this one, at the
yeah.
very start of the school year, what's one thing you tell them to put in place before things start to, like I say, get out of hand, but before problems start to show up?
I don't know if I can pin down one.
Well, we can
Um,
give a couple.
because I think
I think
well, I
first is
do
just acknowledging that this stuff is out there, but that's
acknowledge it,
just
right.
me.
Like I said, I think getting all staff trained,
Mhm.
all staff, just PD for all of them, and we can back it up. And one of the favorite things that I train school staff on is this concept of like addiction proofing our students, right, in this
Mm.
addictive world.
Yeah.
And so because it's all kind of the same stuff, like the risk factors and the protective factors
Yeah.
are the same things. The signs of a problem are kind of the same stuff, right? The way that
Right.
we address the problem, there's some things that are really similar. So
Yep.
there's an explosion. All of the addictive behaviors beyond substance use are all accelerating for our teenagers.
Mm.
There are more things. They are starting to engage in them younger, and they are getting there's more higher rates of teen addiction. And I'm talking about gambling, which is
Yes.
exploding, and disordered eating and self-harm and all things screens, pornography, gaming, it's all
Mhm.
exploding. So staff I think need to get trained on understanding what these things are so that they are looking for, caring about and then
Yeah.
looking for and knowing how to respond to them in effective ways. Not just, yes,
Mhm.
of course, it's compliant with policy, right? But also that is actually effective,
Right.
because I hear a lot of staff go, I don't know how I say this or what I, like,
Yeah.
they
No, absolutely.
what can I do? I'm just a
Mhm.
coach. I'm just a science
Science
teacher.
teacher.
What can I really do? I don't even live in the dorm. So what can I do?
Right.
Oh, honey, so much. Because
Yeah.
you're teaching about brain science, boo.
Mhm.
You got a lot you can do here. So,
Yeah.
so I think everybody just getting like, again, what's the role that they can play? Their lenses are on it, that
Right.
they know how to catch, not just prevent, but also be part of intervening,
Mhm.
early, for a
Yeah.
kid. So I think staff development is part of it because from that then trickles staff advocating for, okay, how do we get students? Now, how do we all play a role in educating students? Where is this going to show up? What are the resources we have? What are the resources we need? How do we
Right.
develop a systemic commitment to addiction proofing them. But within that is, the substance use piece,
Mhm.
and then they own it and they're committed to it. And then they'll
Yeah.
give up quote unquote academic time if need be for some special programming, or they'll infuse it into their
Into the,
curriculum.
I think
That's
that's even
when it's
better.
really good. And into they're already
Exactly.
because you're not going to tell a staff member to do more.
Right.
You're not going to tell faculty to do more.
Right.
Everybody's plates are like Thanksgiving full.
Exactly. I
We
like
all got,
Thanksgiving
we're
full. Yes.
dorm parents and teachers and in some cases, right, and coaches, and like
Yep.
everybody's got three roles and an
Exactly.
advisor and a,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
All the things. No, you're
you're
right.
like, I
All the
can't be a drug
things.
educator too. Yeah.
So you
So I think
mentioned,
that's the big one. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead. I was just saying, you mentioned a few minutes ago about policy, and so I think
Mm-hmm.
that's also really important as well. So I know you do a lot of policy work with schools.
I
So
do.
what does a
Yeah.
strong substance use policy actually need to include that a lot of schools miss?
So this is an hour, right? So
Okay.
I mean, I could so easily pull this out right in the details. So the skimmed and trimmed version.
Hmm.
Here's what I see missing a lot. I'll go from that angle. What I
Okay.
see missing a lot, and I want to make sure they're doing the best they can with what they got, right?
Absolutely.
And what
Yep.
So I just want to make sure I'm not wrong in anybody. But
Hmm.
is one is we need to review that, like a review cycle every single year. I just mentioned some trends to you, some things that are
Yep.
going on
I had
that
no idea about.
may somehow not be listed. Like things get tweaked, and we know that a adolescent
Hmm.
and their parents that are trying to
Yeah.
save them.
Right. No, it's human
that
nature. It's human
it
nature.
has to be specific. It has to, that's kind of another thing. It's got to be very, very specific so that it speaks to an adolescent brain, because if there is a hole in it, well, you didn't
They
say
will find
this.
it.
You didn't specify that. And
Yep.
if you didn't say this, it must be okay. Or, and then the parents are going to get behind that and be like, it doesn't say
Yeah.
it, right? So we've got to be specific,
Mhm.
and we have to be, review it. I say annually,
Yeah.
right? And in that specifics, let me break down a couple to try to just
Yes,
pick out a couple things.
please.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
look down because I wanted to make sure I was bullet pointing on this. First, what I see a lot of folks missing is stating like that this comes from care.
Yeah.
Just
No,
that this
absolutely.
comes
We
from
care about
this
your health
comes
and safety of your child.
this comes from science and care. This isn't just a don't do that, don't do this. We're coming from a controlling place. This, for
Right.
one, it does not align with the mission of our school. It's
Mhm.
incongruent with the mission of our school. And because we are really committed to the well-being, the whole well-being of your child. And this is proven to be language around, which some of the language I love to use, because this is proven to be a threat to student well-being and health, right, at this age.
Yeah.
That we create. So even just putting that out there is a really important part to set
Right.
the stage for the policy. Here's why this is not just because we're trying to suck all the joy out of your life and
Right.
control you, right? Right. And then again, those specifics, and for the sake of everybody in the community being on the same page, for one, that there's understanding, so there's going to be less conflict, right? Less misunderstanding over it, and
Yep.
that's either between parents and
And the
and
adults on campus
administration or
mhm.
kids and counselors or what, right? It's just got to be,
Yeah.
that it's understood. And one of those things I also encourage in the beginning of the year is that you review out loud this policy, by
I
the way,
love
with the
that. That's
students.
great. Yep.
They don't just read it and because they're not
And check
reading
the
it.
box. No, they're not.
Is that
Yeah.
you have those conversations just like, hey, what do you know about the substance use policy? Why do
Mhm.
you think we have this in place? What do you, right? Like
Yeah.
you talk about it so they get to have some buy-in.
Engage with them. Yeah.
Right. And then that there is, you have to define a substance and substance use. I know that sounds crazy, but again, any mood altering substance, smoked, inhaled, or digested for the purpose of intoxication. But so the other short things are, student friendly language.
Mhm.
We want them to be understanding this with adolescent brains. That's really,
Right.
really important. That the information pathway is made clear,
Clear.
meaning who's involved and communicated with
Yep.
when a kid is using. and when and how. And that's between counseling and health center administration and parents and law enforcement, right? When do they all get called in?
Yeah.
Who tells somebody what? I mean, it just has to be it has to be transparent.
Transparent.
So there's not,
Absolutely.
again, and we're also talking, this isn't just about keeping everything warm and fuzzy on campus, but this is
No.
also about legal. We're CYAing as well.
Exactly.
Right, with this.
Absolutely.
Staff need to know what their roles are and their limitations are. I often hear that they're very confused about that. When can they step in, how, where, again, communication. And then the stating of what discipline is about. So similarly to stating what the policy is about, I think stating like that our intention with discipline is to help students learn from mistakes, accept responsibility for their actions and stay healthy and safe.
Right.
Right. We need to state what that intention is. And then we have to and abide by laws.
Right.
Right. Because sometimes
That part.
and some states are required. In North Carolina, our private schools we are required to involve law enforcement. And there's several other states where we don't get to we have to involve law enforcement if they are using an illegal substance on campus. We're supposed to.
Interesting.
But then the last piece is just having a safe haven policy, an amnesty policy.
Yes, absolutely.
And I want to throw in too, don't call it a sanctuary policy, y'all, because that is language that public schools use around protecting undocumented students.
Oh, and that's so interesting because that's I could see that.
Yeah.
So I was like, what? We call it sanctuary, but that was a while ago when things were different. And so
right. Yeah.
No, I get that. That makes perfect sense.
The cultural sensitivity of that.
Yeah, things have changed.
So I think amnesty, safe haven. So some kind of and some kind of policy that allows students to express concerns about their peers, to express concerns about themselves,
yeah.
And go and get help for themselves.
Yeah.
Without it turning into a disciplinary action.
Right.
I really encourage schools to get very clear on this and involve the laws for confidentiality, because at least counselors need to be people that students can go to and be like, all right, so I tried cocaine for the first time this weekend.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it immediately goes to an administrator or goes to a parent.
Right.
Because otherwise,
they're not going to tell you.
Didn't ever bounce that off of a counselor. And guess what? I was in rehab 4 years later. And if I had said, I did this and I want to talk about it and I actually really liked it, there might have been some way that I was
right. Some intervention.
that I would have been guided away from that. Right. So we need to make that easy for them. Obviously, the medical, that kids need to be able to get help for a friend so that we save them.
Right.
With and there being some protections around that. So that is, I think I just see there still are schools out there that are doing no tolerance policies, that are doing one strike rules. And all I want to say about that is that what the problem with that is, for one, there's no evidence that helps students not develop
better decisions
or make better decisions. They sure figure out how to be sneakier about it, just like in the home.
Right.
But that if we want to be, again, aligned with what we say our culture, our school, our mission is about, then it's also not expressing care. It's not caring. It's not saying it's really incongruent with what we say we, where we say we're coming from.
Yeah.
Instead of wrapping around them with the community wraparound. Okay, we care enough about you that we are going to help you figure out how to be healthier and safer and more responsible. We love you that much.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if you're going to continue to harm, if you're going to harm your others or the community, right? I mean, you've got some stages to that, and you step in with increasing interventions, and you involve the parents in that, as well. But you got to wrap around with care.
No, I agree with you. So
and being
a
like,
little
never
while
mind, you're
ago,
out.
yeah, exactly. Just kicking on the first incident. You talked earlier about addiction proofing. What does that mean for a community?
Yeah.
So what is that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So all of the prevention research, right, that's out there kind of leads to, and just what I have seen a lot, leads to, like, we know why kids go there, right? That they do any of these things that can be self-destructive and addictive, right? And it's one of 6 needs. All right. It is Either they want some dopamine popping because they're craving it because there's a dip in it in adolescence. And dopamine is shiny at this age,
yep.
right? Yeah. So they need that. They need like risk managed, thrilling, exciting, like healthy anxiety experiences of like, oh my gosh,
Okay.
can I do it? I don't know.
Yeah. Can I
I
get away
slayed
with
it,
it?
right? They need those. It is belonging and acceptance, right? They are wired right now to be finding their tribe, to like it's in their
Yep.
makeup, right? Belonging and being part of something. Confidence and mastery. So just feeling good about themselves, like they are good at something.
At something.
Identity and purpose, like trying to figure out who they are. Yeah, then like that person, but who they are and like feel like they're valued, on the planet, in the school. And then what am I forgetting? Oh, control and independence. They've been controlled every minute of their lives so far. They are
Right.
craving some agency, some choice, to feel grown up. And
Right.
a lot of these behaviors sports betting feels very grown up,
It does.
right? Pornography feels very grown up.
Yep.
And then, and drugs, right? And then just coping is the last, to not be distressed. And we have a whole generation of kids with, especially low distress tolerance right now. Thank you, screens.
Yeah.
Clothing. So, which is one of the addictive behaviors, right?
Yep.
So we look at those 6 and we say, all right, what are we providing here? How can we help kids have 101 ways, or at least some that they can access that really work for them to meet these needs in fulfilling ways? So even if there's not any holes left, or that we are catching the kids where there are some holes, who have some deficits in one of these areas, and what can we provide and point them towards and teach them how to access, and while they are on our watch,
Yes.
so that even if they do see the porn, have an opportunity to gamble, try the vape, they don't go, oh, that works better than
I
anything
like
else.
this.
And it goes in that hole and it attaches. So when we're thinking about addiction proofing, that means us backing up and just saying, what practices, policies do we have? Can we enhance? Do we need to add? And being conscientious of our purpose is to accomplish these. So there's, unnamed, of course, anonymous. So a campus that I worked with recently.
Yep.
That I sit down to talk to the kids, and it's like they're student leaders, right? That they let me speak with these they're in a student leading role, and they said, well, there's not anything going on the weekend. There's nothing that's more interesting than us being on our phones, or that's more interesting than us, like, I don't know, dabbling in some drugs. Of course, the adults are like, what? We have all this,
programming,
these activities for them, right? Okay. But somewhere there's a disconnect.
Right.
So, and the best way to fix that is to involve the students in it, right?
Exactly.
Where that disconnect is. But they also said, oh yeah, we've got these policies on campus that are still left over from, I want to be careful not identifying
the olden days.
The olden days, which were the pandemic. But we've got all these restrictive social policies. Like when there's policies like, oh, you can't, this is a boarding school, you can't go into each other's dorms, you can't hang out. Like they're kind of controlling kids hanging out with each other. It's like, but they then don't be surprised that they're on their phones all the time.
Exactly.
Right. Don't be, or they're craving belonging so much that that as soon as somebody gives that, when the sports team all is starting to use, nicotine pouches. That's the other thing that's blowing up, or the pouches, is that when that they fall for that easier than if they had a more extensive, fulfilling social world. So we just got to look at it through that model and think about what all our roles can be.
Got you. So let's talk a little bit about college, because we're preparing our kids to go to college, and there's a transition point there. And I think we talked a little bit about, when I was in schools, I did teach a senior transitions course that talked about kind of the first year in college and things to think about, and what blind spots that students may have, or naivete about certain things that are going to be happening in their midst, and how to manage all those things. And so, what do you think right now is the biggest blind spot high school students have about preparing for that jump? Because I feel like it's different from when I was working with kids in schools.
Yep. So I think, especially in independent schools where the vast majority of the kids do go onto college, right? Is that there's so much focus on the academic stuff and on the directions and like what are the interests going to be and the career trajectories and the right. I mean, and so it's like, okay, so we'll talk about like some study skills you'll need, or that they'll, how are you going to balance all the different extracurricular things? Or, I mean, there's all of that. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that the data shows us that almost a quarter of students, 1 out of 4 students, are either not making it through or not coming back for sophomore year.
Wow.
That's massive.
That is huge.
And that the primary driver for the first 2 years of dropping out is mental health. The primary driver. And 70% of students that said they were considering it said it was from emotional distress. So, and then you go to year 3 and 4, and substance use starts being one of the primary drivers. And so that and I want to make sure I get this data correct. Almost 0.5% of college students have a diagnosable substance use disorder during college. At some point during college. Almost half of them.
Whoa.
And while alcohol use has gone down on college, right? Some of they're still doing some, it's not over, and they're still doing some really, really risky drinking. We talked about the buzz balls, right? And Borgs are the other thing. I don't know if you're aware of Borg.
No, what's a Borg?
Borg is a blackout rage gallon. So it is taking a one of those big
that doesn't sound good at all.
Devices. No, and it's vodka plus like a flavor packet or thing plus electrolytes.
Of course, because you got to hydrate yourself during this blackout stage.
I'm going to drink, healthy, right? And they're, anyway. But so, and those kids are twice as likely to drop out, right? The ones that are experiencing substance use disorders, but 30. So specifically with cannabis. So again, now we talked about how THC has gotten ridiculously strong. Cannabis use disorders, by the way, are up 74% in the last 10 years for our high schoolers. So this is by the time they're 17 going into college. What else I want to make sure I say here? Yeah, THC poisonings, all that, right? So those kids going into college, and we have historically high rates of cannabis use disorder right now, or cannabis use on campus. So daily use has gone up almost 40% in the last 10 years for our college students.
Daily use.
It's normalized. That's just daily use, right? So, and unfortunately, only 5% of that 50% of kids that have a substance use disorder, only 5% of them actually get help. And because the majority of them don't realize that they need to
have a problem, right?
That they don't realize that they have a problem because it's been normalized, around them. So, that really gives, and it's still true that half of college section, the most common time for a woman, not just a woman, but men as well, but all genders of folks, right, to be sexually assaulted is during college.
Under the influence of something.
And over half of those sexual assaults involve being under the influence, mostly alcohol, but not just alcohol.
Not just alcohol, yeah.
And that those happen in the first couple months. Half of those happen in the first couple months of school.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I was one of them. Yeah. So knowing all of that, like if our whole, think of how much we put into and care about our students succeeding in the next, forevermore in the next trajectory of their life into college. And is that if we are neglecting, if we're not putting as much attention into taking care of their mental health, preparing them to make safe, healthy, responsible decisions around substances, when they step into college, because every college student, including my own kids, said, I didn't actually feel peer pressure till I went to college. So they need to know how all of the facts and how, if they're going to go there, how to be, how to not hurt themselves or each other with it, what the signs of a problem are, how to steer through, how to help other people, how to get help for themselves. like all of those places of not just steering themselves, but even if like for them to know, by the way, there's an increasing amount there. Lots of kids aren't actually going there. Like, know that you can absolutely find people that
Who
aren't.
aren't. Yeah. Just aren't.
Right. And you can make that choice. And there's a growing recovery community in colleges now too, right? There
Yeah.
wasn't a network of folks when I got sober. It was me and one other girl, like swimming upstream in a Greek system, right? In
Yeah.
the middle of college. But
Mhm.
so they also need to know going in, by the way, everybody's not doing it. Don't fall for that. You
Right.
find your people, but
Yep.
it's really important that we teach them to guide them in creating their guidelines for themselves before they step on
Before they
campus.
get there. Mm-hmm.
Not just letting those life experiences teach them the hard way, because some of those hard ways can be really rough, traumatic stuff you can't shake for a lifetime.
Right.
So we want them thinking about like, all right, what are my lines going to be? What's the relationship I want to have with substances and don't want to have? How am I going to stay committed to that? What kind of people am I going to be looking for? When am I going to, kind of situations am I going to duck out of and how? Like,
all of those
again,
things are super
before they
important.
have to be right. Because in those moments when they're like, oh, but these people are accepting me. And if I funnel these 5 beers, they're going to chant
like
my
me.
name. And I want belonging and dopamine more than anything. That
You're
they
right.
can't wait for the split-second decision to make those choices. They've got to really be thinking about what they're going to do beforehand. And it's shown that when kids really do think about that and plan that out beforehand, they're way more likely to make
decisions,
healthy decisions for themselves. Yeah.
There you go. Kriya, this has been awesome. And so I really want to just kind of take a pause here and talk about the work that you're doing. I know now that you're partnering with SoundCheck Prevention and you're expanding prevention training with them. And so with that partnership, what gap does that fill for schools? What are you doing? Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Yeah, so yes, I'm available as a solo agent to come in and do programming with your schools, with your staff, with your parents, and I can do the webinars. When your parents are from all over the world, can do parent webinars that you record and share with your community, or again with staff, and do consultations, and like we're talking about policy, I can give you some red pen on some of that stuff and guidance on it. But I have started partnering with SoundCheck, because for you all that are not aware of SoundCheck has done some really awesome stuff. You can look up what they did in the entire town of Aspen, Colorado. Like they went in and did an intervention for the entire community to help kids be using substances less, because there were some trends happening. So they really do system level work. And what I love is that they start with an assessment. So they come in and I know that a lot of folks use Authentic Connections or use the NCAS, the ISHC assessments that include substance use and mental health and school connectedness and, all those things. Really important. So assessing that first, and then taking that data, making use of it, and then really informing interventions at different levels. And you don't have to have a problem emerging to use, like, how do we strengthen and fortify, and again, a kind of addiction proof kids, and be preventative and help strengthen their mental health and their fortitude to go into, young adulthood. We don't have to have an overdose on campus to do that. Right. So I partner with them and we can do bigger stuff together. If a school wants to engage, and having multiple people doing multiple classrooms at the same time. I mean, again, I can come and do something for a day or over multiple years or for a few days. But if you want it, bigger, that they join me and we can really get in there.
Great. And so if they do want to bring you in, what's the first step? How do they reach out to you, get in touch with you?
Yeah. You can contact me. My email is kriya@krialenzion.com. You can also, again, reach SoundCheck at their website as well. If you're like, I want in on the assessment and the big thing, I just know that, you can contact them directly too. But you can just email me and we can have a conversation and just chat about what your ideas are. We can co-conspire and create. I mean, I don't have here's the fixed package that I do. I don't work that way. I have a bunch of ideas and things that I see people responding to. And I can do drug specific of course, I come in and do drug education, but I can also come in and do programming that is kind of that addiction proofing concept and talk with students about the malleability and the addictiveness of their brains,
Gotcha. Okay.
using that for good habit forming.
Yeah.
And applying it to all of the, potentially risky things. So just reach out to me and we can just have a conversation, and there's no commitment to that. We can just chat about. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Kriya, thanks so much for being here today. This was certainly an eye-opening conversation. I love the way you bring together lived experience and clinical expertise and give schools something that they can't get from a textbook or a canned curriculum, which I think is so important. And as Kriya mentioned, if you want to learn more about her work, we're going to put her contact information in the show notes, and so you'll be able to get it there. And if you're not already following us on Instagram and TikTok, search for Dean's Roundtable on both platforms. We'd love to see you there. If you enjoy the table, please subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave us a review. It really helps people find us. And thanks for pulling up a chair at the table today. I hope this conversation gave you something to think about, or maybe something to even try in your own school. And as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time at the table. Have a good one, folks.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Table Podcast Series. Is your student life program delivering on your mission? Our new K-12 student life assessment moves you beyond anecdotes to evidence-based decisions. Through comprehensive stakeholder surveys and expert analysis, you'll get concrete insights across 8 essential dimensions of student life, from culture and wellness to staff effectiveness and resource allocation. We're seeking founding partner schools to be the first to experience this transformative assessment process and help shape the future of student life evaluation. Today's episode was hosted by Bridget Johnson in conversation with Kriya Lenzian. Produced and edited by Andrick Sigmund and music by PremiumBeat.com. For any questions, contact information can be found in the episode description. And, as always, thanks again for listening.